welcome everyone to the first ever episode of, I don't know what it's going to be called yet, but welcome to the first episode of the virtual remote video podcast. I'm Droshik, aka Andre, or should I say I'm Andre, aka Droshik. And I have one of my good friends, Joe, aka Synergyzt, here with me.
Howdy.
And hello, hello. We gonna be talking about music and production and everything in between. So, tell me a little bit about yourself and how did you come up with that artist name?
So I guess the idea behind the name was that, considering my background, I'm kind of a multi-instrumentalist and composer. So I like to kind of incorporate a lot of different types of sounds, including, organic instruments, as well as synthesized instruments. So Synergyst was kind of the idea of combining all of those elements and having them, synergize and kind of combine with each other to make the end result, make all the tracks.
That's really cool. I like how, like, actually, I don't know what I like. I was just gonna say something and then that's gonna get cut. How'd you get into music production?
So I kind of grew up in a musical family. Both of my parents are a cappella singers, and my dad is actually a composer. He got his master's from Northwestern University. So growing up, I've always been around music, around singing, and so I first got a guitar when I was 10, and started playing that for a little bit, learning all the metal riffs and rock and roll kind of stuff, which I was interested in. But as I got older, I was kind of I got more interested in composition and creating whole pieces, using a lot of different instruments. So picked up a drum kit. Eventually, I got like a keyboard and a synthesizer. So I just kind of expanded to everything. And eventually, a friend introduced me to Fruity Loops.
Good old Fruity Loops.
Yeah, shout out to Caleb Lowry. So he was the main catalyst for getting into music production, most electronic music production, I guess I would say.
When was that? Like, how old were you when you got your paws on Fruity Loops the first time?
That was probably like 2012, 2011, 2011.
Okay, so
I would say.
Fairly recent, like 9 years.
Yeah, it's I've worked with like Pro Tools, so I was familiar with that, and then I wanted to get more into synthesizer material. So Fruity Loops just kind of, for whatever reason, Pro Tools I couldn't really wrap my head around with.
Yeah, I can relate
for synthesizers. So yeah.
So after you got your hands on Fruity Loops, what was the next steps? How did you continue evolving that production journey?
Well, I've always studied, different compositional techniques. So I didn't kind of come at electronic music production like most would. I would say a lot of people, start DJing. At that time, I'm going to be honest with you. I thought that every DJ produced their own material because that's everybody was like, you had the Skrillexes coming
if
out.
Only, man. If
yeah.
Only.
So I didn't know anything about DJing, and so I kind of came at it from still a songwriting approach, or like kind of also a album writing approach. I wanted to have kind of a whole composed piece as opposed to like a single or an EP. So that was always kind of the driving motivation to learn and to get behind different sequencers and different types of sound design. So that I guess that would be the end result, was getting just into sound design itself, no matter the source. It could be from a field recorder, a Foley, or a synthesizer, or even just like guitar, or anything else, drum kit, putting effects on it, playing around with it.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. So like, right now, I guess, what is your approach to production? Like, how do you start producing music? Do you have like a specific pattern or workflow that you follow, or is it kind of like free for all and you like? I don't know. I want to hear more about that.
Right. I definitely have a workflow that's taken a long time to get established, but it's definitely pretty streamlined at this point. I've since switched to Ableton a few years back. I've also worked with Serum since it came out. I just bought it straight away.
Nice.
Um, so I've
Pretty sure
become
it's like
really,
one
really,
of the most popular VSTs out there right now.
yeah. I mean, it's got to be. It's everybody uses it. So
Yeah.
yeah. And so I actually really find that since I've had it from the beginning, I know a lot about it. So it's fun to talk with people about it just because I'll discover something that I never thought about. Somebody else will take something away, from what I know. So it's pretty fun to actually be able to use something that's kind of universal. That's just a synth.
Which is actually and then you brought up an interesting point of actually like using something for a long time, because I feel like nowadays there's like a new synth or a new VST or a new plug, a new effect coming out like every other month. So a lot of people have the what you call gas, I myself included, like
Oh
gear
yeah,
acquisition syndrome, where you're like, oh, look at all this like shiny new toys and new plugins, and you just
right,
keep like getting all of them, and just you end up playing with presets and maybe like tweaking a couple parameters, but you never actually like take the time to learn the instrument and like dive deep and know kind of like how it actually works. And
right. Yeah,
when
I
you
think
do
that's
that, you can kind of like figure out, oh wow, like I can do so many things with it because like how it works on behind the scenes.
right. That's really important. I think that's spending time with your main tools is just it doesn't get better than
Absolutely.
that. So
So
I
what
guess
tell me
the
about that
other
workflow.
yeah. So I switched to Ableton. I currently am running a template that I've customized over the years, and it has all of my instruments hooked up into my live instruments, my hardware into a group, and all of my kind of separate other groups for mixing purposes. You got drums, bass, any kind of synth textures or effects. There's an effects group by itself as well. And all of these groups, I can actually. Should I share the Ableton screen while I'm talking about this?
Yes, please. Yeah, if you
All
could
right.
share, like, actually show us what you're working with.
Yeah. So I've got a project open.
Great.
Cool. So yeah, you can see I've got my different groups. They're color coded for the most part.
Nice, keeping
So
it organized.
yeah, very very organized. I will say that when I start a new project, I decide whether I'm going to actually start writing, I guess, the arrangement of the project, or if I'm just going to have like a separate sound design session. And I find myself pretty much all the time now having opening an Ableton project, using the template to just make tons of sounds that I'm going to use in the project that I'm kind of building towards, and then I have my kind of palette of sounds and colors to work with after that. So I really try to separate creation and writing the song. Once I get to a certain point where I feel like I have enough material to work with, I'll write as much as I can and then just kind of redo the process. I'll have the same project open, and I use this pink section, which is the resampling section, to just write anything that I need and then drop that into the other groups. And all of the groups have a sampler. Let's open the voice group. There's nothing in here, but this is the bare bones kind of group setup, which is a drum rack, and it just has a bunch of slots for different samples. So once I create and record and consolidate everything in Ableton, I'll have the sample list open in my browser panel, and then I can just pop whatever sample I want into those racks and have them access that.
That's really cool. So you basically like create your own sounds, and then as you're creating them, you could just drop them into that rack to then be
Right,
used like as when you switch to like the actual like songwriting, or like just writing and arranging
right,
your
exactly.
track. That's really cool.
Yeah, I find yeah, it's just a little easier to get started. And if I have to like stop and create something and then switch back to writing, there's just it's kind of like a you're fighting against yourself and trying to move forward.
Oh yeah, I definitely
Yeah,
can relate to that as well. It's like you're going like in 7 different directions and then end up not going anywhere. And
right,
you're like, oh wow, it's like midnight. I have to go to sleep.
right.
So
So
also worth noting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like all of the, at least from what I can see, like you're just using like stock like Ableton plugins. Like I don't see anything
yeah,
that's like third party. So basically, anyone that uses Ableton can essentially recreate those racks,
yeah,
or
pretty
if
much
you want, you can
everything.
share them as well.
Yeah, definitely. I actually did get some of the mixing racks that you can see in here. Like this little guy I found on a YouTube video that was just talking about mixdowns, and my whole project, even from the sound design and creation uh, yeah, mode, I guess, or is set up to be kind of pre-mixed. I guess to put it much more simply, every track is mixed to the kick if it's a dance track. So the kick is hitting at something like minus 10 dB, and then everything else is mixed around that.
Nice.
And
So
what
you
that
have a
allows,
good amount of headroom there.
yeah, the headroom's there. And on the master, I have something that's plus 6 dB. So if I see that um, anything is, there's no limiter on it either. So if I see anything clipping going into the red, I can search for that. So I'm kind of mixing when I'm writing. I'm also mixing at the same time, which
Nice.
I think speeds the process up a little bit.
Yeah, it definitely gives you less work when you're actually in the like mixing and mastering stage. Like after
Mm-hmm.
you've done like finishing and arranging your track, it just gives you less fine tuning, or
Yeah,
yeah, I guess less fine tuning and more like focusing on the overall kind of like sound
right.
versus like start to mix from scratch when yeah.
Yeah, less tweaking for hours on end, trying to
Yeah,
find the perfect
exactly.
balance. So
That's cool,
um,
man. That's very interesting.
yeah.
What's your studio look like, or like where do you do all of this?
So I have a studio in my apartment, and it's basically it's a bedroom essentially. So
Yep, same
bedroom
here, man.
producer. You know how it goes,
Shout out to all the bedroom producers out there.
right? It's a lot of people, um,
Yes, especially nowadays.
right? So I've got a decent amount of hardware. I have enough to uh, kind of get most of the sounds that I want. I use a Korg R3 as my like main keyboard for like sending MIDI to Ableton if I'm playing an instrument inside of it. Korg R3 is also a great instrument by itself. I love building patches on it. Um, I also have an Electron Octatrack, which is a monumental piece of hardware. I got the idea to purchase one because I saw it used in Nine Inch Nails. It was like a rig kind of breakdown, tour rig. So Alessandro Cortini, great composer, synthesizer guy. He was running through it, how he used it on stage, and then I researched it and heard it, and I was like, I have to get this. This is amazing.
Speaking about gas, right? Like, oh, I got look
Yeah,
at this new toy.
right.
I need to.
Look
I
at
need
that
to
shiny
get
thing.
it.
Yeah, I'm back. So yeah, the Octatrack, it's unlike any other piece of gear that I have. I can send any sound to it, and then record back into Ableton. So it's a huge resampling tool. You can also use it in a live performance, but I've
Right.
only used it in the studio so far. Um, I also have my first bit of modular gear, which is a Neutron, a Behringer Neutron, which is a great. It's got that kind of old school filter and delay, bucket brigade delay sound. So that was that was a nice cheap piece of equipment, but I'm actually using it mainly as like an effects unit, so I can send audio to it and not necessarily have to use the oscillators on it. So it's pretty fun to work with.
Yeah, I've heard great things about it, and like you said, it's pretty cheap, so it's like
Yeah,
very like user friendly and like a great like entry level into that like modular or like semi modular world, which can
right,
be very overwhelming, especially if you're like new to it.
right.
You just get lost. You're like, I don't know which module to get because there's like literally thousands of them out there. So this is
Right.
kind of like a nice entry level synth that kind of like gives you enough patch points, but not
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed you with like, look at all the cables and holes that you have to fill in, and you have like no idea what you're doing.
Right. Right. And it kind of fills my, I have my cord, but that's a digital synth. So this was my first like actual like analog piece of gear, which I was pretty happy about getting. Um, I guess the routing of these things is pretty cool too. So I have the currently I have the Octatrack sending audio to the Neutron, and that's audio is going into Ableton. But I also have actually I can show it on the camera. It's right here. This cool little piece of gear.
Oh yeah, I remember that little guy.
Yeah. Oh, shameless plug. The Neutron was one of the big sound design pieces in our track telephone. Made all the crazy you know
Also,
talking
also that
sounds.
that cassette tape was
Yeah,
used for
that's true.
all the voice. Yes,
Yeah. So
good
the
time.
voices were recorded onto this. It's just got a tiny little micro cassette tape, and it's really perfect. I found it, got it for like $6 or $10 or something like that, and it's got some 1/8 inch ins and outs, so I can
Right.
actually send the Neutron to the tape. So it's a little, I can send anything I sent to the Octatrack now to a mini tape cassette.
And that little real life lo-fi sound.
Yeah,
Nice.
so pretty fun. I also use, you can see in the background, I've got an iPad hooked up.
Yeah.
iPad's got, obviously it's a relatively expensive piece of equipment. I did end up getting it used, so that's great. Save some money there.
Always get used, man.
Yeah, if you can. And it works flawlessly. All of the synths on it are super cheap too, so you're not spending more than 10-15 bucks.
Yep.
Um, on a synth. It could be free too. I've got plenty of free stuff on there, so that's just a huge palette of sounds, and it's pretty fun to use.
How do you send the audio from the iPad to Ableton?
I currently use the headphone to go into the Octatrack, so it's just directly from the iPad to the Octatrack.
Got it.
Octa sends a clean signal, Neutron sends its signal, whatever it is, and then tape cassette from there. So I could actually send an iPad signal through the Octatrack to the Neutron to the tape cassette to Ableton if I wanted to. Yeah, right. Sound
Yeah,
design. That's what it's all about.
exactly. Endless possibilities. Your
Yeah.
mind is your only obstacle, man.
Yeah.
Uh, cool. Any other pieces of gear or equipment that you use, like not on
Um,
a daily basis, but like throughout your production?
I do have a couple guitars, got a bass.
It's all
I've
about the
also
bass maker.
got, yeah, definitely. I've got a couple of DJ boards, mixing, some Pioneer stuff and some Native Instruments, Tractor, that kind of thing. So a couple of pieces of tractor gear. Um, yeah, if I need a DJ, I'll either bring those out to an event or I'm comfortable on Pioneer as well. So
Uh, we were talking about earlier, like outside of the scope of the podcast, about you getting into Python a little bit
uh,
and using that sorcery to create a bunch of samples and whatnot. You wanna tell us a little bit more about
sure.
that?
Yeah, so I've been kind of self-teaching Python, which has been pretty fun. Yeah, it's there's actually so much like stuff on YouTube. You can find anything on YouTube, but I was lucky enough to find some really good Python courses, not just for audio, but for image stuff too. So I kind of have my Instagram is all about the imagery associated with the project. So I was hoping to kind of expand that side as well.
Nice.
But I ended up finding uh, a couple of things online that was like open source code, and one of the things was basically the code processing of convolution reverb. So I don't know if Ableton 10 has a convolution reverb stock plugin, but there's a few out there. East West plugins has one, and I'm sure Native Instruments has convolution.
Yep.
Um,
It
but
rings a bell. I don't think it's a stock plugin in Ableton 10, but
yeah,
yeah, I think it's one of those you can get for like $5 or free.
right, it's out there.
Yeah.
So the basically for those that don't know, convolution, you'll go into a room and you'll basically create a transient in the room, and you'll record the uh, the audio of the response of the room echo, and that will essentially, you can apply that if you have that as a plugin over your sounds. It'll create a tail of all of your audio, so it'll add reverb. But so with the Python, where that comes in is with the help of my buddy Joe Aguilar, he kind of coached me through some syntax on this. Um, I basically was able to make a Python program that allows you to populate like just a regular Windows 10 folder of samples. So if I put like 25 samples into this folder, the Python program will take the first sample and it will multiply. It will do the convolution process against every other sample in the folder, and then it'll go to the second one and it'll repeat the process with the rest of them, continuously like shrinking, the size until it's processed all of the samples. And the really cool thing
So
about
cool.
that, yeah, the coolest thing about that is I can press start on that program. With my sound design process, I'll usually create anywhere from 50 plus samples. So you can throw tons of stuff in there. Press the button, go make a cup of coffee, do whatever you need to do, come back in, and it like the equation is 25 times 24 divided by 2. I think that's how many samples you end up getting. So if I do the
I'm
quick
not
math,
that good at math, but
yeah,
that's a lot.
25 times, if I put 25 samples into there, it'll spit out 300 samples without me having to do anything. So
Nice. While you're making a cup of coffee, that's pretty
exactly,
neat.
yeah. So that was
Do the
each
do the samples
profile.
like sound similar to each other, or there's like a drastic difference between them?
It depends on what you put into it. I've noticed the best example I can say is the rhythm of whatever sample you do. So if you put in a drum rhythm that's like a snare pattern, it'll essentially make a delay that's also filtered by whatever frequencies are inside the snare. So if you have like a bass sound, it'll filter the bass sound and then it'll repeat the bass sound based on your rhythm. So if you're creating something and it's all in the same BPM and it's in the same key, you can get some really cool kind of polyrhythms and different things that you would have to spend a lot of time automating and Ableton
Right.
just to get that one sound.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
You should do a sample pack. I'm just saying.
Yeah. And this track is an example of the one I've got pulled up on Ableton is an example of that whole process. I kind of filled a lot of the drum racks with samples that I got from Python.
Well,
So
since you brought it up, what are you currently working on? Would love to get some early insight into that.
yeah, this is just kind of based on I just said the Python samples, so that was kind of the driving force behind that, just to see what I could do with it. And the coolest thing about this particular track is that it's all in 140 beats per minute. But there's a whole section that goes into a full triplet. So everything is, every sample was re-recorded with a triplet feel. So the whole, you could essentially say the BPM kind of changes because it's not like one triplet is against that standard 4/4 pattern. And so it sounds slower. It sounds like more like it's at like 105 or something. I think the calculation is 105 around there beats per minute.
Do you wanna show us a little bit of that?
Yeah, I guess a good example of the writing process too is none of this yellow, blue, white, green stuff is going to be here. It would just open, and I would jump to the pink section, which I've got an instance of Serum loaded. And so normally I would write something like this, a MIDI track, and once I was happy with that, I would record directly back into Ableton as a resample, and then consolidate it so it was saved. So if it was like I'm basically making loops
Right.
of everything. So with the Serum patch I've got loaded, I'll try and create all of the samples that I use in a project. Sometimes I'll find something online or on Splice that's like a drum loop that I kind of like, or that's got a rhythm that I generally want in the track. So I'll either use that as a placeholder or just kind of kick it in there. But pretty much everything else is designed from scratch. It's either recorded or designed in Serum or any of the hardware. I try and keep that. That's kind of part of Synergyzt too, is creating everything and customizing everything.
I like that.
So I'm going to just play this horn sample. And this is an example of me, since I've already started outlining the track, I've made this after, and then eventually I kind of pop it into one of the groups, and then I'll literally just erase it from the pink group. But this is what this sounds like. And it's just kind of this pad.
Very chill and ambient. I dig it.
Yeah, it was. I just have so much fun designing things in Serum. You can do everything in Serum, pretty much. And so the biggest thing that I'm trying to do when I create in this pink group is, you make a ton of variation here and you save it later. But when I jump into the project, so if I mute that real quick. So as you'll see here in the Serum, when I make all of the macros before I use them, so I don't use them to tweak the sound during the mix. I'll just kind of pre-build them. And
then you just automate it after.
Yeah, I make possibilities and then use them later. All right, so after I make the Serum patch in the resampling area, I'll pop it into the track, put some variations on it, and some of the other groups are already populated with different samples. So we've got my sampler down here. All of these have different samples that I've recorded or sent to the Python program. So Python, nice. Most of these are pulled from that result. And that would sound something like this. I believe this is the transition kind of 4 to the floor to the triplet, which I was talking about.
I dig it, man. It sounds really good.
Thanks. And then you get the switch up right here.
Yeah, it's a really cool effect. It's like it does feel like as if the BPM was just automated to like 20, 30 less, but it's still playing at the same exact BPM. It's really cool. How like we perceive speed and where it didn't actually change.
Right. That was just a sequencer change from the sound design process. So,
Nice.
and also Python multiplying the data of a triplet sample versus the regular straight sample. There's some of that in there. So I just thought that was really cool, where I didn't have to like automate any BPM changes. I could just kind of
absolutely
do it in sound design. And then you get kind of the ending section. I think the horn is in here. We'll play that part.
I like that low end bass.
Thank you. That's another serum patch. Got a little upper harmonics and some for some width and solo sign, almost sign.
That track is right up my alley. I like that a lot.
Nice.
Is Umami the final name of the track?
So I've been debating about a name change. I guess I can pop out of the screen here. I've been debating about a name change, and I've recently decided against it. So I'm sticking with Synergyzt. But I was going to change it to something along the lines of Umami or like Mr. Umami or something like that. So I was kind of, now this is just going to be like the pseudo name for, the thing that I name it, so that I don't have to think of a name for the track before I finish it.
Oh, so, that's good, man. Coming up with names for tracks can sometimes, take longer than writing the actual track itself.
Totally. Yeah. Right.
Cool, man. Well, we're reaching our time limit here. What's next for you as far as like for the remainder of the year? Like, what's on your mind and what's kind of like your goals?
It's a good question. I am currently trying to kind of think about the content that I would make for a YouTube channel.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah. So, look out for some production videos and some tutorials, some other just fun stuff. I kind of had a few things on the back burner. I would really love to, alongside with learning Python, I'm also trying to learn Blender, which is a really cool 3D creation tool. So I'm hoping to use that and make some custom video content to go along with all of the music content that I make. So hopefully the YouTube channel will show the some music audio reactive type 3D models.
Yeah, that sounds like a perfect match of like what you're trying to do.
Right. The Instagram kind of teases some of the material that I would use. So check out the Instagram if you're into kind of glitched videos and glitched imagery.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll make sure to post all of your links and social stuff in the description.
Very cool. So I guess the only other things are cut.